Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Internet video stokes poll fraud fear in Sudan. Ethiopia accuses Egypt of stalling talks on sharing Nile water. And 25% of Indonesian children smoke. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
An internet video shows members of the Sudanese National Election Commission, NEC, inserting additional ballots inside polling boxes during the vote counting process. The opposition said that the video constitutes evidence of fraud. In response, the Election Commission said that the video was staged and dismissed any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, the ruling National Congress Party, led by President Omar al-Bashir, rejected allegations by Washington that the elections were not fair and free. Two Eastern Sudanese opposition parties have accused the government of rigging the elections in favor of al-Bashir's party.
The fever of fraud is spreading like wildfire online. An excerpt of a videotape was released over the internet showing members of the Sudanese National Elections Commission committing fraud at a polling station. The video shows elections officials tampering with polling boxes, which were locked with the same distinct official seal. The video also shows the employees who were in their distinct official uniforms inserting additional ballots in the polling boxes. In response, the NEC described the incident as a staged play and said it has not received any complaints of fraud against any of its employees.
Anything released on the network and by the websites could be a very well-acted play. This doesn't prove any wrongdoing by the NEC. We will not investigate because we have not received a complaint. We will not investigate anything that appears online.
Meanwhile, the NEC said it's closely following the announcement of the election results by the various polling centers. The NEC had previously assigned Thursday, April 22nd as the deadline for the announcement of the election results. However, the deadline will likely be extended in light of these latest developments. Meanwhile, a new wave of allegations was cited at the polling centers of some of the parties that took place in the elections. This news comes after the Democratic Unionist Party, led by Al-Marghani, announced that it will not accept the election results. Mohammed Uthman al-Marghani has reportedly left the country in protest.
In the end, we decided to reject the election results because we believe they will be unfair to us and to the rest of the parties. In response, we have issued an explanatory statement to voice our party's position on the election process.
The election results will be released in a few days, but according to political observers, they appear to be less crucial, and there is doubt that these results will help redraw Sudan's political map. This news comes after official elections results revealed a landslide victory for the National Congress Party, ruling out any surprises or breakthroughs by the opposition.
Ethiopia accused Egypt of stalling talks over sharing the Nile River. A spokesperson for the Ethiopian government said that his country, along with 6 other downstream countries, will sign a framework agreement next month on what he referred to as just usage of Nile River water.
The day before yesterday, Cairo reiterated its rejection to any agreement that does not recognize Egypt's historical rights to the Nile River. The Egyptian Water Resources and Irrigation Minister said that if the downstream countries sign an agreement without Egypt, then Egypt has the right to do what it sees fit in order to protect its national interests.
Egypt is the gift of the Nile. This is what ancient Greek historian Herodotus stated. On the banks of the Nile, Egypt's largest cities were established and expanded. And along its basins, ancient agricultural traditions evolved in this very old country. However, what Egypt sees as common sense is not necessarily seen the same way by its partners who share the Nile. The agreements of the 7 downstream countries, including Ethiopia, that recently demanded what it referred to as a more just system of sharing the Nile River water, means that Egypt's share of the Nile water will decrease. These 7 countries said that next week they will sign a framework agreement, which the Ethiopian government spokesman called a just usage of the Nile water. He accused Cairo of stalling talks over sharing the Nile River. Egypt's Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation said that this agreement will affect his country's national interests. He added that Egypt will not allow any country to compromise its rights to the water. The Egyptian minister also said that his country has the right to take suitable measures to protect its national interests if the downstream countries were to sign an agreement that does not honor Egypt's water rights. The minister also said that Egypt and Sudan must agree on any agreement and demanded they be given a veto right over any agreement pertaining to the Nile River. For Egypt, it is a matter of life and death. These were the words of the Minister of Legal Affairs and Parliamentary Councils, Mufid Shahab. He stressed that his country has historical water rights and that Egypt will never compromise these rights. He addressed the Egyptian parliament, saying that Egypt has no other water resources but the Nile River, explaining that 95% of the water used in Egypt comes from the Nile River. He asked how Egypt could give up its historical rights to the river. Egypt's view is based on 2 agreements. One was signed with Britain in 1929, and another was signed with Khartoum. Both of these agreements give Egypt the right to use a large share of the Nile River water. According to political analysts, if these 2 agreements were to be changed, the door would be open to long-term conflicts and perhaps wars over water between the downstream and the basin countries.
The head of the Iraqiya list, Dr. Allawi, demanded that the recount include additional provinces beside Baghdad and that an investigation be launched into the disregarded election boxes.
The recount should include Najaf, Basra, Diwania, Mosul, and other areas. We also want to know what happened to the election boxes that were disregarded. They said that these boxes should not be recounted. Why was this decision taken? Why not include in the recount all the election centers that were criticized?
Meanwhile, dialogue and negotiations are ongoing to reach a final agreement on the new government.
كل هذه الخطوات إن لم تتوقف فإنها أجلت لحين الانتهاء من الخطوة أو الخطوة.
These talks, however, depend on the results of the vote recount in Baghdad. Political observers have raised questions about the upcoming negotiations and their possible results.
وما ستؤول إليه المشاورات.
Perhaps
the fumes from the volcano in Iceland have affected the political process in Iraq. They may have derailed the negotiations over the formation of the new government. The decision of the Iraqi court to conduct a vote recount in Baghdad was described as surprising. It might end the negotiations because the results of the elections may change after the recount, which may affect the formation of the alliances. Members of the Iraqiya list have made their calculations based on the number of seats won by each slate. If only 1 or 2 seats are won or lost, then the situation will not significantly change, but there will be temporary tension.
أنا أعتقد ممكن يكون هناك توتر بين القوائم اللي قائمة تأخذ من قائمة ثانية يعني يكون
I think that there could be some tension between the parties that will lose seats and the parties that will gain those seats. This may cause tension, but it will not change the way in which the government will be formed. However, it may create temporary tension that will cause the delay of the negotiations and the formation of the government. But I do not think that the recount will change the way in which the government will be formed.
The beneficiary of the recount is the state of law slate, which thinks that fraud led some of its seats to go to competing parties. However, they do not think that the decision to hold a recount will affect the negotiations, saying that political alliances are based on political platforms, not personalities. They also said that they have operated in this manner even before the court's decision to hold a recount.
A great deal of the platform that we are presenting has already been achieved. Only a small part remains. The same man who started the implementation of this platform will complete its implementation. This is why we support the candidacy of Nouri al-Maliki.
How flexible are you in the negotiations?
Our alliances will be formed with parties that have similar platforms. The committees will decide how similar the platforms are and the mechanisms in which the alliances will be formed.
The Iraqi National Alliance, which called for holding the recount in a transparent manner, also said that the recount is unlikely to affect the results of the elections. This explains why some of its members believe that the largest parliamentary coalition should form the government, in accordance with Article 76 of the Constitution. Meanwhile, negotiations continue, but without any significant results.
The results will not change. If they change, it will be a very small change. It will not have any effect on the election results. As I've said, the committee that released these numbers was wise, and therefore I think that the change will be insignificant. Negotiations over the formation of the government will follow. Legally speaking, we don't have an unlimited time to form the government.
The agreements that have been reached through local and regional negotiations are now dependent on the results of the recount. Political observers believe that the recount will have little effect on the results of the elections, but it may affect the formation of the alliances. Perhaps an alliance might be lost when one party gains seats at the expense of another. From Baghdad, Amjad Talia, Al-Iraqiya.
The leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution has strongly condemned the U.S.'s nuclear threat against Tehran. Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei says the threat is a disgrace to the history of the U.S. politics.
رئیس جمهور آمریکا به زبان تلویح و اشاره تهدید اتمی کرد. خب این در ملت ایران کارگر نیست این تهدیدها. اما این مایه ننگی شد برای تاریخ سیاسی آمریکا.
Ayatollah Khamenei says the international community must not allow Washington's threat against Iran to go unnoticed. The leader added that Iran will not allow the U.S. to renew its, quote, infernal domination over the nation by making such threats. Earlier this month, the U.S. said it will not launch nuclear attacks against countries that are members of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT. Now, Washington added, however, that the NPT signatories which do not live up to their obligations will be excluded from the policy. The U.S. has repeatedly accused Iran of not sticking to its obligations as a member of the NPT. Well, another meeting by representatives of the so-called P5+1 countries on Iran's nuclear program has ended without any result. Now, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council and Germany have once again failed to agree on new sanctions against Iran. Envoys from the P5+1 met behind closed doors in New York to discuss a U.S. draft outlining new penalties on Iran. Washington's European allies have already endorsed the sanctions. Now, China and Russia have been reluctant to agree to the punitive measures. The UN Security Council has already slapped 3 rounds of sanctions on Iran for refusing to end its uranium enrichment. Now, the West claims Iran's nuclear program is aimed at acquiring atomic weapons. Tehran, meanwhile, insists its nuclear program is purely peaceful. Iran says it needs atomic energy to produce electricity for its growing population. Well, meanwhile, the head of Iran's atomic energy organization has once again reiterated that Tehran is ready for a nuclear fuel swap. Ali Akbar Salehi says the basics of the proposal are accepted, but Iran wants objective guarantees to receive the nuclear fuel needed for Tehran research reactor. He says the fuel swap should take place simultaneously and inside of Iran. Salehi also said Foreign Minister Manicher Motaki will soon discuss the issue with the members of the UN Security Council. He told reporters that Tehran is reviewing alternative proposals on the table.
You see, there are a lot of proposals coming from here and there, so most of these proposals are being under investigation, and so the Minister of Foreign Affairs will be discussing and negotiating the different proposals with the different countries that have proposed these proposals.
Well, Iran's defense minister has denied reports that the Islamic Republic is planning to develop ballistic missiles capable of striking the United States.
ما چنین برنامه‌ای نداریم.
Vahidi dismissed the allegations as psychological warfare. On Tuesday, a senior Pentagon official told the Senate hearing that by 2015, Tehran would be able to build missiles that could reach the United States. James Miller said Iran would be able to improve its missile technology with the help of foreign countries. Now, Tehran says its missiles serve defensive purposes only. Let's now shift our focus to Afghanistan, where NATO has acknowledged it has killed 4 Afghan civilians in the southeast part of that country. Now, earlier, NATO had claimed that it had opened fire on a car, killing 2 militants in Khost province. The Western Alliance says it made a mistake in describing the dead as militants. Now, Afghan government officials have confirmed that all 4 civilians were students, one of them 11 years old. The continuous killing of civilians by foreign forces has caused deep resentment among the Afghan population. Now, a recently released report by the UN showed that the number of civilians killed in 2009 was higher than in any year since the 2001 U.S.-led invasion. The violence in Afghanistan last year killed over 2,400 civilians. The United States and its allies claim militant hideouts are being targeted in their military operations. However, most of the attacks have resulted in heavy civilian casualties. Earlier, our correspondent in Kabul, Fayez Khorshid, told us more about the Afghan people's resentment towards the United States-led forces in Afghanistan.
Well, we are seeing that civilian deaths have had a very negative impact on the U.S.-led mission in Afghanistan. The U.S. commanders here in Kabul saying that their mission in Afghanistan is not only to defeat the Taliban, but also to win the hearts and minds of the Afghan people. But we see that the Afghan people do not trust the foreign troops on the ground anymore. They say that there is no difference. They describe actually the foreign troops in Afghanistan as killers of the innocent. These civilian deaths by the U.S. forces are not only damaging the U.S.-led mission in Afghanistan, but have also turned the Afghan people against President Hamid Karzai's government. These civilian deaths have distanced the Afghan people from their government, and the Afghan people believe now that their president is not going to do enough to force the foreign troops in Afghanistan to avoid civilian deaths.
مناورات عسكرية جديدة يبدأها غدا الحرس الثوري الإيراني وتستمر 3 أيام.
Tomorrow, Iran's Revolutionary Guards will begin a 3-day military maneuver in the Arabian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Naval, air, and ground forces will participate in these maneuvers. According to General Hossein Salemi, deputy commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, Iranian missiles and other weapons will be used during the maneuvers in order to test Iran's defense capabilities. The announcement of the new military maneuvers came after Turkey announced its willingness to play a mediation role in Iran's nuclear standoff. Washington's reaction was mixed. However, Ankara expressed optimism over the success of the mission. Turkish Foreign Minister Ahmet Davutoglu said that progress has been achieved through the talks held in Tehran yesterday. He added that the Iranians are very open. These statements may strengthen China's position, which is still committed to a diplomatic solution to the nuclear standoff.
Turkey has begun the nuclear game of chess between Tehran and the West. After his visit to the Iranian capital, Turkish Foreign Minister Ahmet Davutoglu announced his country's willingness to mediate between Iran and the West in an attempt to avoid new sanctions.
Turkey can revive the diplomatic solution, which calls on Iran to send part of its nuclear deposit abroad in exchange for a highly enriched uranium.
Iran, which insists that the uranium exchange take place on its territory, has now agreed to send its valuable enriched uranium to a friendly country like Turkey, although it has refrained from stating that position directly. Instead, Iranian diplomats talked about the friendship with Ankara and and pointed out that the Turkish government supports Iran's right to own nuclear technology. However, friendship is not the only common denominator between the two countries, and while it was late to come about, the motivational force behind Turkey's role is Iranian natural gas. The balance of trade between the two countries is $11 billion. The additional sanctions that are being discussed by the 5 leading countries plus Germany will strongly influence Ankara.
The Iranian Islamic Republic always welcomes negotiations. We believe that diplomacy is the key to resolving large problems. But if they choose other alternatives, we cannot do anything about it.
China rejects new sanctions on Iran and reiterates that the diplomatic solution remains an option.
The talks between the 6 leading countries in New York do not imply that the door for dialogue has been closed. We believe that dialogue and negotiations are always the best means to resolve the Iranian nuclear issue.
The Chinese veto is now standing in the way of American efforts to pass new sanctions against Iran. However, Washington has managed to present a draft resolution that calls for additional sanctions to be discussed at the United Nations Security Council. This political pressure is a temporary alternative to economic pressure.
استنكر حزب الله بشدة ما ورد في تقرير من سماه ناظر القرار الدولي 1500.
Hezbollah strongly criticized the content of a report by Terry Rod Larson, the UN envoy for the implementation of Resolution 1559. In a statement issued by Hezbollah, it said that the report represents a blatant mandate over Lebanon. Hezbollah believes that Larson tried in his report to revive the headlines of igniting internal strife with a resolution that has nearly expired. Hezbollah said that it was not surprised by the language of the report, which favors the enemy by not condemning its daily breaches of Lebanese sovereignty while directing accusations against the resistance. Hezbollah said that the darkest part of Larson's report is its scandalous attempt to conceal its sources in its discussion of weapons in Lebanon, which raises questions and doubts over the credibility of an international organization that relies on fabricated and misguided information for its official reports. Hezbollah accused Larson of being fully committed to protecting Israel's interests.
وانحيازه التام لها.
وكان الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة بان كيمون قد أعرب عن
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon expressed concern over the potential outbreak of a new conflict in Lebanon due to advanced weapons being transferred to the country through its border with Syria. In his report on Resolution 1559, Ban believed that Hezbollah's possession of independent military capabilities creates a fundamental challenge to the security of Lebanese civilians and the government's authority.
محذرا من إمكان اندلاع نزاع آخر في لبنان دخل الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة بان كيمون.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon discussed the controversial topic of Syria's transportation of advanced weapons to Hezbollah through the inland border with Lebanon by warning of the possibility of the outbreak of another conflict in the country. In his report to the UN Security Council on the implementation of Resolution 1559, Ban called on all sides to stop attempting to obtain or transport weapons and build semi-military capabilities outside the country's authority. Ban revealed that he received the information from a number of countries confirming that weapons are being smuggled through the inland border. He indicated that officials in the Lebanese government acknowledged the fragility of the border and the possibility of weapons smuggling through them. The UN Secretary General reiterated that all countries, except the Lebanese army, should be warned about transporting weapons to Lebanon, considering the matter to be the basis for Lebanon's stability and that of the region. Ban said that the continuous activities of the Lebanese and non-Lebanese militias outside the Lebanese government's control create a serious violation of Resolution 1559, referring to the clashes that took place on April 8th in the headquarters of the General Leadership of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine in the eastern Bekaa Valley. He explained that the headquarters of these organizations in the Bekaa Valley creates a challenge to the inland border control. He said that the time has come to seriously deal with this dangerous situation. Ban believes that Hezbollah's possession of independent military capabilities creates a fundamental challenge to the security of Lebanese civilians and to the authority of the government. He called on the group to become solely a Lebanese political party and carry out the requests of the Ta'if Agreement, which all Lebanese people comply with. The UN Secretary General condemned Israel's daily violations of Lebanese airspace, which violates Lebanese sovereignty in Resolutions 1559 and 1701. He called on Israel to fulfill its obligations and stop all these operations.
Cigarette advertising continues to spread across Indonesia, a country that has not signed the World Health Organization's anti-tobacco treaty. According to the WHO, 1/4 of Indonesian children between the ages of 13 and 15 smoke cigarettes.
من منا لا يعرف إعلان السجائر هذا؟
Who is not familiar with this cigarette ad? The ad seen here was captured on a main street in the Indonesian capital, Jakarta, where tobacco advertising continues to gain momentum. This news comes despite the ban that is being imposed on tobacco advertising in other countries. In contrast to many countries, Indonesia, which has the world's 4th largest population, has not signed what has become known as the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. Anti-tobacco legislation in Indonesia is limited. Last year, a new health law declared smoking to be addictive and urged the government to crack down on tobacco advertising. In addition, an anti-smoking coalition is lobbying for tighter restrictions on smoking in public places. But nobody seems to be listening. Allowing or banning tobacco advertising in Indonesia has sparked a wide public debate, especially after Indonesia's 2nd-largest Islamic organization, Muhammadiyah, issued a fatwa, a religious decree that bans smoking among its 30 million members.
Tobacco companies have acknowledged that smoking causes cancer, heart disease, sexual dysfunction, as well as birth defects. In other words, it leads to a slow death or suicide.
Anti-smoking advocates say that children are easy prey for tobacco companies. According to the WHO's reports, nearly 1/4 of Indonesian children between the ages of 13 and 15 smoke cigarettes. Sandy Andy Sasanto, a 4-year-old child, has been smoking for a while, and in the presence of his parents.
I don't know when he started to smoke. All I remember is that one day, as I returned home from work, I saw him smoking. Since then, he has been smoking while sipping a cup of coffee.
A disturbing scene that was justified by the tobacco industry.
Throughout our program, we only market to people between the ages of 18 and 38, which is the legal age to smoke in Indonesia.
المدخنون في إندونيسيا وبحسب دراسة صدرت عام 2008.
According to a 2008 study, smokers spend more than 10% of their salaries on cigarettes.
وهو ما يمثل 3 أضعاف ما ينفقونه.
This figure is nearly 3 times higher than that being spent on their children's education. Nasim Ramadan, BBC.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible from support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news. Read our blog. Get transcripts of past shows and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.